Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. It is something that a lot of us have been experiencing, can be holding you back. It's the F word. I'm going to say it right now, so be prepared. Fear. A lot of us dealing with fear. It is crippling in many regards, and especially, I don't do politics, but in this climate now, there's a lot going on, a lot of uncertainty that can lead to fear, and that can challenge many of us. How do we deal with that? How do you even identify it? We're going to talk with somebody that gives people courage to shine. That's what she's all about. And whether you're fearing something, you're stuck, whatever it might be, she is your direction for wellness. Sara Regester is back on the program with us. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Steve.
Lots to talk about.
Feeling it. Yeah.
Lots to talk about here. I think the time is right to dig into fear, especially as a coach and somebody that moves people forward in their life, our professional of the year. This acronym, I hate to write on cliches, but it's just so true. You probably know the one I'm going to say. False evidence appearing real. It just describes fear very well, doesn't it?
It does, because so often when we're afraid of something, it leads you into this future-oriented rumination. Then the wheels start spinning, the inner dialogue starts getting revved up. Next thing you know, you're feeling it physically, the charge of this fear. And so it's important to have strategy to recognize, okay, what's real and where am I just, running amok inside my internal dialogue, really losing a lot of energy over something I have no control over.
That's a great point you bring up as well, where we need to realize, and sometimes it's not easy, to let go of the things that we can't control. But we try to, and then fear ensues from that.
Exactly. Because there's something about being so almost paralyzed. Some people right now are just so afraid that they're afraid to even take a step forward in their life. But what's happening is that it can become where your fear takes over, and then you lose presence, you lose connection, and this downward spiral. And what I find in these conversations sometimes is two sides. One is that people are fueling each other's fear, and then it's increasing. But on the other side of it, from a stress resilience standpoint, that tend and befriend that we've talked about, that is a way to meet adversity, is when you come together, share together, and talk about it to support each other, actually releases the oxytocin hormone that creates more courage, dampens fear, and helps us be more bonded, connected, and social. So there's two sides to that coin, I think.
So am I getting from you, it's very impactful to talk about your fear?
Absolutely. It's so important to be able to lean in to someone you can trust that can just hold space and really hear you. And perhaps, it will work two ways back and forth, that you support each other. And what's tricky is if you don't relate to someone's fear, then it's just important to be that listener, supporter, challenger that might actually be that neutral perception that can help someone kind of rein in, okay, what's real, or what can you do about it? What's in your control? And so there's a dance, I think, about how much, not trying to fix people and tell them what to do, but how to hold space for someone that's really feeling a lot of fear.
Do you subscribe to this? And I've heard this many times, and they'll do studies, they'll do research, they'll do polls on this, that roughly 90%, 91%, it's always right around that 90% number of the things that we worry about, i.e. fear, never happen, never materialize. We are literally wasting time and energy on something that doesn't even exist.
It's true, because it pulls us out of that, what's real in front of me, what can I really focus on? If you remember that attention equals power, where our attention goes is what grows. And so there's something about the discernment of assessing the fear that one is feeling and then making the discernment of, well, what am I going to do to support myself? What do I need to get off this cliff of anxiety that I can actually take steps with and make a difference. And so I think there's an opportunity for people to be more solution oriented in their immediate life and their immediate circle, where we have less control about the bigger picture out in the world. But I think it starts with us individually in how we're living our life in our day to day and not being paralyzed by fear. But how am I going to prioritize what helps me feel more resilient, like taking a walk or doing my hobby or having a mindful practice? It's like the strategy to support ourselves will help us rein in that fear that might be false or blowing out of proportion, and be able to actually see from a reality place, okay, what can I do for myself? Or what's real here that I need to take action with?
Is fear the same thing as anxiety?
I would say anxiety is more like a symptom of fear. But anxiety is typically we're future oriented, worried about the same thing that you said, false expectations appearing real. I think they're definitely connected. But and I am not a healthcare professional in terms of mental health, but just from what I know, that anxiety is often going in tandem with fear and things in the future that haven't happened yet, or that might happen, or that you worry are going to happen. So that's more the nature of the anxiety, and finding a way to support ourselves through that.
It when you think about living in the moment, everything we're talking about here is all the more reason why we need to really focus on living in the moment. There's no fear. And it's not a cop-out. It's just a statement. Live right now, this second, right here. Mm-hmm. Where's the fear? Mm-hmm. That you can.
Well, it's about being solution oriented in terms of if my mind is revving up about things I have no control over, that's not being part of the solution. But what can I do? So it might even be the small steps I can take to impact my environment, my workspace, my family. And there's also a piece here that came up in a conversation this weekend about someone who just loves sewing, and that for 4 hours straight doing her hobby of sewing put her in the zone of just this quiet mind that focused on the task of sewing. And so the outside world was not like interfering with her thoughts. It was like a little escape, a little vacation of being in the present moment, focused on something totally pleasurable. And how we can feed our energy, feed our creativity when we still prioritize those kinds of things that are important as part of our resilience practice.
Oh, let's say you're at the moment where you have some fear. Yeah, it could be, let's say you work in sales and you think there's a problem with one or two big accounts. And now you're worrying, like, what if they cancel? What if this? What if that? In a situation where fear is starting to work its way in, what do you do? What are your suggestions?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that that kind of fear is because you want to do well, that you want to be successful.
Yes.
And so that kind of fear can easily be managed when you have a practice of centering, breathing into your center, having the focus on the outcome you desire in terms of success. And I think what's coming up when we're having this conversation is recognizing the different kinds of fear. And so reality fear of a true danger, it is important that we're paying attention so we don't get hit by that truck or something. So in one sense, it's survival adaptable. And on the other side is when we create bigger problems, building like a mountain out of a molehill, from a situation that might come up. But there's another kind of fear that people often aren't recognizing. That's the fear that of a spiritual nature, of a fear that is asking you to step out of your comfort zone to grow and stretch in some way. And so that's kind of can feel edgy. You could be worried about a brand new experience you've never done before, but there's something that you're actually going to grow from the engagement. So that's like another layer of fear. That's the stretch factor of personal growth and character refinement. That's a positive also, but nonetheless inside it's like,
Public speaking,
Still feel
there's
it.
one. That may enhance your job, bring up your professionalism, make you more of an expert at your niche or field if you deliver something in front of a group of people. But on the back end, you're like, how am I going to do that? I don't know if I can. And you have fear. And at that point, probably the best thing is centering, breathing into your center.
Yes, because I know that fear as a public speaker. I actually love public speaking, but it wasn't always like that.
Sure.
And I was just practically shaking out of my skin. And what happens when we're so impacted by that performance fear, that's more like wanting to do well and wanting to come off as competent. That's a real fear for success-driven people. And in that case, if I lose presence, lose connection, go in my mind about what's going to happen, then I actually will make a mistake. I will lose my space. I will like stutter or something. And so that's where it's important, again, to have those strategies of deep breathing, centering, and different tools and resources that we all can pick up to support how we can stay calm, centered, and present. And I would say that's pretty global in the bigger world now, when there's so much change happening, so much outside of our control, a lot of factors of unknown. That's real, but yet it's not quite in form yet. It's out there in front of us, but there's still a lot of unknown. So that's really where it's important that we each find our own kind of centering way, our way to kind of unplug, as we talked last time about, turning off the social media or, having less screen time. Some of these things are important strategy just to kind of give yourself a break from the input that's out there constantly barraging us.
What if it's things like flying? You have a fear of flying or fear of something like that. Would you say that fear comes from something else? And now that I'm asking this question, I wonder if it's everything. Your fear comes from something else, but you need to connect where it's coming from.
Yes, in terms of how I work with it, I would call it a closed symbol, meaning oftentimes there's something in your past that gave you a bad experience, and now you've encoded this pain tape that says something scary or bad or horrible, and then you avoid it. And so that's one thing, to be able to sense, like, how can I go back and, create a new story that I can actually fly and not be in the freak out mode the entire flight. And I would say for some circumstances, there could potentially even be, if you want to get a little woo about it, like past life. If you were burned at the stake, and now you're afraid of fire, there is something. So that's interesting, because a lot of times for those kinds of fears, for example, hypnosis sometimes is helpful to help people get to a deeper layer of consciousness where they can kind of unpack,
Sure,
what's behind that fear.
Even the fear of flying, I think it might be reasonable to think that somebody, maybe when they were a kid and they're on a roller coaster, and that feeling of the belly flop where, it's just like, whoa, wait a minute. You might feel that on a plane,
Yeah.
during turbulence or whatever it might be. And there's a connection to your childhood, but you're not really sure. You don't know that. You haven't made that connection.
Right. And that's where I think it's important to have a strategy. Once you recognize you have a really impacting physical fear of something, what can you do to get yourself off the edge of the cliff? Could be prayer, could be breathing, could be having a plan of where your mind will go so that you can stay focused and calm. And some people might even go with tranquilizers or alcohol. But I don't think you'd feel so great on the other end of your flight if you try that way.
The mindset. So I'm going to share very briefly here my journey with something and how I overcame it. And that was a fear of blood tests. I would have a blood test coming up. You have routine labs, and take a yearly physical, whatever. You make the appointment for the lab. The day before would come, I'd be like, let me just change that and go another week. Not a rush. And then another week would come along and like, I'm busy. Yeah, let me just change that for another week. I just had a fear. What's the fear? I don't know. Fear of, am I going to pass out? How am I going to react to it? Blah, 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 blah. And I started changing my mindset. This is in the past year, by the way. Okay. I changed it around to say to myself, I'm going to get information. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not so good. But either way, I can take action for me, for my health. This is a good thing. So I started changing it around. And then I would just engage in a conversation with the phlebotomist, just talking to him, just get my mind off of it for the 30 seconds that it takes, if that. And it worked. And worked so much, in fact, that I had some health stuff going on, all good now, but, they were doing testing. In the past, 3 months, I must have had 12 needles, for, biopsy, blah, 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 blood drawn back again. Blah. No issues whatsoever. The mindset. It's amazing if you can take it and just look at it in a different, call it a camera angle. Now I almost laugh at it. I look back and sometimes I laugh if they're going to draw blood. What are you laughing at? I don't know. I'm chuckling. It's all good. It's all good. Changing your mindset makes a huge difference.
Yes, and I would say another approach, in addition to changing your mindset, is taking baby steps to engage with it. Depending on what you're afraid of, what that fear is, if you can just start engaging on a lower level, smaller level, simpler level, and taking those little baby steps, it can really help you to start engaging with it, not as a big fear factor, but as something you're getting acquainted with, that you're making the unknown knowable by kind of putting your big toe in the water. And that can be a process of opening something that normally you've always said, no, I'm not going near that. It's too scary. And for example, I would say similar to yours, when I was public speaking was my way to promote my coaching. Still is. Love speaking now. But in the beginning, what my strategy was kind of similar to yours is that I would get there early and kind of chat with and make friends with the people in the audience. So then they weren't scary because I'd already had a conversation with them. And so it took that, cold, here I am, let me give my pitch kind of thing into a, let's share now, time to get started. And so both of these examples are that tend and befriend, leaning in, having that conversation, getting support, taking the fear factor out. So there's something on the physiologic level that's actually supporting more courage and less fear by that sharing, that leaning in, that getting support versus suffering on your own, that having that internal freak out and you don't want anyone to know, you're going to try to hide it.
Yeah. I think you found the secret to public speaking right there. Getting to know the audience before you go in, whether it's 10, 20, 50, whatever, you always have a friend there. And even if you needed a fallback, I know we're digressing here, but just to your point of how it all works, if you need a fallback, you're in the middle of talking, maybe you lose your place. And, it could be Jim, I was just talking to Jim. We didn't even know what we were talking about a second ago, but you have a connection to the audience. So yes, leaning into it. And it's almost as if being prepared for it. I guess I was prepared for the blood test by thinking about it, but then talking with the phlebotomist and just engaging in a different way as you would do for the public speaking.
Yes. And I would say that there's a whole nother part we just barely dipped into is sometimes memories from our past, particularly our childhood, could be at the root of some of our fears now. And so when you're ready, the memory will be there and you'll recognize, oh yeah, that's what that's about. Well, I'm not the 4-year-old anymore. I can kind of look at this now and kind of reframe what happened before in my past and not have to carry this to where I am now in my life. So that could be something like fear of dogs, or fear of closed places. Maybe you got locked in a closet or something.
Yeah.
Kids get into all kinds of things between being punished or their siblings. Yeah. Kids learn from their experiences. And so then if you code an experience as painful or scary, until you re-encode that in a different kind of memory, you're going to just keep carrying that memory along and bringing it forward. And then you're going to see it show up in other arenas that might awaken a similar flavor.
Do you feel that most of these fears are coming from childhood situations?
I think many fears do, because if you think about the child, As little people, we want to be loved, we want to be liked, we want to feel safe. And so do anything for approval of our parents, of our teachers, of our friends. So that really does a lot to our naturalness when we try to be likable. And that's, being accepted. These are a really important part of our human psyche that, as adults, we sort of unpack. Okay, what's my real nature? What's the part of me that's kind of putting on a mask so that people won't see my fear or my insecurity
Yep.
or the truth of what I don't want them to see? That's a fear right there, looping it back.
For sure. Yeah. And the public speaking, there we go. Fear of acceptance. What about if they don't like what I'm talking about? What about if nobody says anything? What if? How can you support people through coaching and counseling with fear?
With fear. Well, I would say, since I wrote the book on Courage to Shine, how to feel confident outside your comfort zone, I learned myself, and that's how I really teach others is, from my own experiences with fear and stress and learning how to master stress. And so, in my coaching process, because I have training in shamanic healing, which is mind, body, spirit, there's definitely a spiritual component of how can you evolve and grow? How can you refine who you are into being more of your authentic nature, through the coaching process, but also through the action steps that people are invited to take between coaching sessions. So coaching you can get a lot from a one session, but the bigger transformation is when the sessions build on each other over a couple of months. I'd say 3 months, you can completely turn your life around.
Wow.
Very quickly and very efficiently.
It really is cumulative when it comes to those
build
sessions.
on it.
Yeah. Wow. I don't think a lot of people know that's how the process works.
And it's important to recognize that there's something happening between sessions, and it ties into self-responsibility, that when someone's really ready to make change in their life, to transform an area of their life that isn't working for them, they need the tools, sometimes some teachings of some new wisdom to know how to go forward and do it differently. But it still boils down, the coach is never going to tell you what to do. It's a partnership. Almost as if the client is driving the bus and the coach is holding the GPS, guiding where we're going to go to get to that target, get to that destination.
And I'm sure there's accountability. Let's say you're driving, but you're really not going that fast, or maybe you stopped off at a fast food place and that wasn't your intention. The coach can say, well, wait a minute, that's not on our GPS and not the best choice for you. I'm sure that accountability comes into play.
It does. And it's how fast you want to go, because we're wired to evolve and grow at our own natural pace. Some move fast, some don't. And so really as the coach to honor that person's, how fast they want to grow is an important part, that you're staying together.
Don't be afraid of change. There goes the fear right there. How do we connect with you, Sara?
Well, it's important to know how I spell my name, Sara with no H. Regester is all E's, so they can find me on Instagram at sara.regester. And certainly my book is available on Amazon, Apple Books, and Audible, if you're an audio reader. And then my website is directionsforwellness.com. And certainly they're welcome to email me at sara@directionsforwellness.com. I'm easy to connect with.
Your book is fantastic, especially for what we're talking about right now, giving you the confidence to get out of your comfort zone. Because when you're stuck in your comfort zone, nothing's happening. You're just doing life.
You stay in the devil, and can be very complacent, So sometimes you need that little courage boost to get going forward.
Love it. Thank you for being here today. All great stuff and just fundamental. Everybody's got fear. Let's control it. Let's work on it. And looking forward next time we get together.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B. Console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C. Take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! It's now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D. Help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.